Welcome to this edition of Under the Radar for Sunday, always late again, May 14th. And this week I want to follow up on the red pill screening that took place at Sydney University on Thursday, the 11th of May. Now, I mentioned in my video on Wednesday before the event that The Guardian and the ABC would be there to cover the event. Now, some of you noted in the comments that it's doubtful that those two organisations would be able to cover it with any semblance of objectivity. And what do you know? You were right. Here's The Guardian's piece. The red pill screening divides campus libertarians from pro-women groups. So they couldn't get past the headline without starting to twist the narrative. So if you were for the screening of a film that talks about men's rights in public, then you're not pro-women. Let's put aside the fact that it was made by a woman, produced by 3 women, and the organiser of this event was a woman. They all obviously have internalised misogyny. The controversial film about men's rights prompts protests at Sydney University and a heated debate about freedom of speech. Don't you love the setup? As if there's a debate about free speech to be had. There are those that believe in free speech and want to be free to attend the screening of a film, and then there are those authoritarian scumbags that think they should get to decide what other people can and can't watch based on their own fee-fees. In both the fictional world of the 1999 film The Matrix and the very real one of the men's rights movement, the red pill represents embracing reality in all of its uncomfortable complexity. Proponents tell of their red pill moment, the point at which they rejected blissful ignorance for reality. In the context of men's rights activism, their uncomfortable truth is that men's lives are of lesser value than women's. The Matrix itself doesn't appear to have any particular notions of gender equality. Feel the condescension dripping from this piece. The idea that men might face some disadvantage in life is akin to a fiction. Outside a small auditorium in which the film was to be shown and under the observation of a small group of police officers. Now, notice she doesn't describe why police presence is actually necessary. The two groups taunted and filmed and rallied against each other. Rival chants started up. Good night, alt-right, from those holding banners about the MRA's tears, and freedom, freedom from a group that included a man in a shirt that read, "Feminism is cancer," and another in a "Make America Great Again" cap. Yes, I'm sure those anecdotal observations are representative of the people that were there. I mean, you wouldn't be trying to paint a caricature of the type of people that attended the event on a particular side, would you? But we'll return to anecdotes later on. Eleanor Morley of Fascist-Free USyd and the Socialist Alternative Club told Guardian Australia the film was deeply misogynistic and gave a platform to men's rights activists with outrageous views about women. She had watched it online the previous night. I thought it was a bit of a joke, really. It made no impact on me. Well, I think that speaks volumes about the type of person you are, but I have my doubts that Eleanor or most of these protesters have even watched the trailer. But let's grant that they have. This is the same tired pattern. Just get out your bigotry bingo card and throw around unsubstantiated slurs because you can't argue actual points. But its argument that men were systematically oppressed by society she very strongly disagreed with. The film was worrying for its anti-women stance, which Morley said reflected that of the US president. It's not just an isolated group of weirdos who share these views. Listen to the desperate false equivalencies. You must be like Trump to want to watch a film or argue that men face some disadvantages in society. Again, no refutation of any of the points in the movie. Morley said the intent of the protest was not to shut the screening down. We're simply here to present a counter, left-wing, pro-women, anti-homophobic message. I don't know how this documentary is homophobic, but just get in as many oppression buzzwords as you can. But I think the author actually left out another buzzword. Here's some footage that was sent to me by someone attending the event.
Queer, bigots are not welcome here. Racist, sexist, anti-queer, bigots are not welcome here.
So if you didn't get that, it was racist, sexist, anti-queer. Bigots are not welcome here. So apparently watching a documentary about men's issues makes you a racist as well. Of course it does. According to Conservative club members, the protesters' initial plan had been to storm the auditorium halfway through, effectively ending the event. And they probably chickened out because the cops were there because these people are consummate cowards. Now here's what Renee Gorman, the organiser, had to say. I put a trigger warning on the tickets because according to USU, this film is physically threatening to women, organiser Renee Gorman told the crowd of about 100, perhaps 80% men, gathered inside the auditorium before the screening on Thursday night. I don't know about you girls here, but I put on my big girl panties this morning. What a classic. And here she is having a laugh at the triggered snowflakes. And really, that's what you have to do with these emotional infants. She went on to say that she was particularly passionate about domestic violence not being a single gender issue. That's something I really want to pioneer. It needs to stop being stop violence against women, she said. It needs to be stop violence, full stop. Well, that would require a little common sense, which I wouldn't expect from the feminists and their apparatchiks that formulate government policy. Gorman had invited those who opposed the screening to come along, watch it all the way through, and then have a debate. Their response had been to call her and her fellow organisers sexist and bigots and tear down posters advertising the event. This is Sydney University. It's not Berkeley. We're not going to let alternative views be silenced just because people are offended, she said. There are a lot of things that I find on campus offensive, like putting up posters of Che Guevara, who murdered thousands of people, but I wouldn't stop the socialists doing that. And that, my friends, is someone that talks like she understands what free speech means. Now, lest you think this article is balanced in some way, let's get back to reality. The 2-hour film was more confused than it was hostile, proffering statistics of US military war deaths and the women and children first policy anecdotally observed in water disasters as evidence of the expendability of male lives. Individuals' protracted, specific, and in some cases bizarre experiences of custody battles and paternity tests were put forward as evidence of the diminution of all men. So firstly, this is a subtle admission that the film is not hostile to women, but there is no real case for male disadvantage. Notice how she conflates statistics with anecdotes to muddy the waters, something she's quite happy to do, as I said earlier, in other contexts. Now, I'm not a big fan of anecdotes as evidence. If you want to make the case for systematic discrimination, you have to demonstrate it with evidence. But I think the idea of male disposability is fairly well demonstrated through conscription into the armed forces and workplace deaths. The audience watched on mostly passively, perking up only when the documentary depicted protests like the one they could still hear going on outside the auditorium doors. Racist, sexist, anti-gay, MRA, go away. And my version doesn't even do justice to the level of retardation that occurred at Toronto in 2013. And that shows you also how creative these idiots are, still chanting almost the exact same thing 4 years later. But the irony is seemingly lost on the author, that the authoritarian scumbags outside the auditorium were making the same point the film was making. Oh, and by the way, in the pictures, I noticed one of Sydney Uni's biggest regressives. Remember this character who thinks he should be paid to attend university? Well, here he is again, spruiking his authoritarian credentials. Well done, sir. You made under the radar 2 weeks running. Now, there is some silver lining to this article, and that is we may not see many more of them. The following appeared under the story. Since you're here, we've got a small favour to ask. More people are reading The Guardian than ever. Yeah, just for laughs. But far fewer are paying for it. Advertising revenues across the media are falling fast, and unlike many news organisations, we haven't put up a paywall. We want to keep our journalism as open as we can, so you can see why we need to ask for your help. The Guardian's independent investigative journalism takes a lot of time, money and hard work to produce. Yeah, okay. But we do it because we believe our perspective matters, because it might well be your perspective too. Well, I think it's a good decision that you haven't put up a paywall, because no one would pay to read your crap, precisely because you don't do independent investigative journalism. And speaking of publications in trouble, how about the #1 independent feminist website in the world? Well, if you're #1 and you're in financial trouble, what does that tell you about the product you're selling? I mean, you might have a good product, especially since we live in the age of grievance mongering, so either your product is crap or you don't know how to run a business, or both. I'm going to go with both. Now, if you want to see a more in-depth critique of this online rag and its proponents, check out the videos by Dave Cullen and Roaming Millennial. Links in the description. Now, they've actually managed to raise $27,000 of the $50,000 they want to raise, but they give you no indication of how that $50,000 is going to help them stay sustainable. I mean, what's to say they won't be back at the table in a year's time asking for more? Just listen to the pitch. You shouldn't have to live in a world without independent feminist media. Yeah, but most people do. They don't even know you exist and they get by just fine. Let's see what other gems they have here. Over the last 5 years, the Everyday Feminism team has built an incredible network of intersectional feminists. I mean, it's almost as though they're trying anti-marketing. How could you come to believe that a network of intersexual feminists would be a selling point? We offer a unique educational inside-out approach to fighting everyday oppression. And with the Trump administration in the White House and the political climate as dangerous as it is, we know our work is especially critical now. Oh shit, this is embarrassing. I'm embarrassed for you people. But let's have a look at some of that critical work. Healing from toxic whiteness. To learn how to heal from the impact of internalized white supremacy and take a stand against systemic racism in the age of Trump. Oh yeah, so if you want to support that horseshit, be my guest, and then do humanity a favour and kill yourself afterwards. I'm going to go and bathe in some toxic whiteness now, but before I do, a quick word about some upcoming events. As promised, there will be a patron-only live stream coming up on Sunday, May 28th Australian time, so that'll be Saturday night for North Americans. Now, to be part of that, you need to be a patron donating $5 a month. Details of exact times will be posted on Patreon in the next couple of days. So I encourage those of you who want to participate to put your questions down beforehand so I can prepare some answers, especially if they're the types of questions that require a bit of research. You'll also be able to ask questions during the stream, but priority will be given to questions submitted in advance. Also, before that happens, I want to do a test run, and that'll be open to everyone. I just want to check that my internet can handle it. So I won't be taking any prepared questions for that, but feel free to drop by and ask some questions or just listen to me ramble on about some shit. And I'll do that next Sunday, the 21st. And remember, if I can get my Patreon over the $500 mark, I will start some giveaways. So just something to think about if you are considering supporting the channel. And if you don't like the idea of signing up to Patreon, you can always make a one-off donation over at VidMe, where they have a tip jar function. So that's it for this week. As promised, here's the list of legends that have been kind enough to donate $2 or more on Patreon. As always, it's very much appreciated. I'll see you next time.